Thank you so much for joining us today for our accessibility tips and strategies workshop for the Creative Corps Inland Southern California grant program. My name is Jennifer Kane, and I am pleased to be with you all tonight. Some access notes for you. Tonight we have closed captioning available, as always, actually. So that is at the bottom of your dashboard, show captions with the CC icon. You can go ahead and click on that and either just choose to see a full transcript show up on your right-hand side of your screen, or you can get the subtitle settings. ASL is being provided by Rise Interpreting. Thank you so much. We will have 2 different interpreters taking turns, taking breaks in between every 20 minutes. So you'll see themselves pinned to the, I believe it's the upper right-hand corner of your screen. If this is something that you'd like to keep right in front of you, you will need to pin them. They've also spotlighted themselves, so you can pin them to make that more visible for yourself. Spanish interpretation is also available. Mariela Trujillo is our interpreter. In the bottom right-hand corner of your Zoom dashboard, you'll see the interpretation icon, which is a little globe feature. You can select that and tune into Spanish interpretation. And again, tonight's session is being recorded so that we can share it with those who cannot attend. I'd like to start with a little bit about who we are and where we are. So a practice for folks who are low vision or vision impaired is to do self-descriptions, verbal descriptions of yourself. So I can model that and practice that for you. My name is Jennifer Kane, and I am a 40-year-old cis female white woman wearing a maroon mauve top with porcelain white earrings. My hair is tied up into a bun, and I'm not wearing any makeup. If any of you feel like unmuting or sharing for yourself who you are, you can also just share your name, where you're calling in from. I invite you to do that at this time. There's also no pressure to do that, but I wanted to go ahead and make that space available for all of you. Feel free to unmute if someone's got their hand raised. Angela, go ahead.
Can you say the prompt again?
We're practicing doing a verbal description of yourself and modeling verbal descriptors of what you look like for someone who's visually impaired or has low vision.
Okay, thank you.
Would you like to practice or share that with the group?
Sure. My name is Angela. I am a female. I have gray hair. It is past my shoulders, blue eyes. I'm wearing a red print blouse today and a navy blue skirt and thick LL Bean hiking boots with no socks. I'm 5'6", and I live in Victorville, California, the high desert. My feet touch the ground in Victorville, California, in the high desert. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And would anyone else like to share? Because I'm sharing screen, I can't actually see all of you. So that was a very helpful description, Angela. All right. This is you'll see this often used in spaces that are virtual to share, who's in the space. So where we are, I wanted to start with the Creative Core and SoCal's land acknowledgement and our commitment to tribes. And I'll go ahead and read that out. We acknowledge that we are embarking on new work on unceded ancestral and traditional tribal lands. The Arts Councils have been reaching out to individual tribes to begin a dialogue with federally recognized tribes and with tribes who are still seeking recognition. We are committed to supporting our ongoing relationships with tribes and hope to work with them to build a land acknowledgement statement together. But we also affirm our intentions for creating ongoing relationships that honor the culture and practices of Native communities and to strengthen our awareness of historical and contemporary issues throughout this work. We also invite Native artists and culture bearers into this work and are committed to meeting with Native communities individually to discuss the program. This is a work in progress that will continue to evolve the more we learn and grow in our relationships and knowledge. Currently, we invite you to visit nativeland.ca to find more about whose land you currently reside on. If this is a new practice for you, it's really exciting. And I'm going to type it in the chat. I love this website, nativeland.ca. Oops, sent that to the wrong person. And if you already know the native land that you occupy, please go ahead and put that in the chat. You can do a little introduction with your name, the current political city name that you reside in, and then also the ancestral lands that you occupy. And I invite you to share that in the chat. And I will do the same. Thank you. Is it Amelia? And if you are an artist or work with an organization, could you also put that in the chat just so I have a sense of who's in the room? Thanks, David. Are you, yeah, and if you're with an organization or you're an artist. Thanks, Rebecca. Nice to have you here. Land back. Is that the organization you're with, David?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Not currently, but I have worked with 2 different organizations and been inspired by the movement. I've worked with California Indian Nations College and Thunder Valley CDC, and I've been very fortunate to do so, supporting in their missions and lifting up their voices.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Important to get involved in. All right. Are all of you driving home from work? Is that why I'm not hearing from more folks? All right, Sarah, thanks. Thanks for sharing. Western Shoshone, Serrano. Yeah, it's oftentimes in the areas, it's multiple ancestral lands, right? It's not just one, which is interesting, right? Because our current boundaries don't really, the way we think about the world needs to shift. Okay, we have a lot to go over tonight, but I want to start with going over just what the agenda will be for the night, for the evening. And to let you know that the goal for this is to give you a little bit of context and background, but to sink your teeth into some really useful strategies, hopefully, for the projects that you have in mind. And I will do my best to speak slowly and make space for questions as we go. there's a lot to get through. We might not get through everything. I'll make sure to share all of the slides and the links in the chat, as well as a spreadsheet with all of the links immediately after the session. So I will get into just a real brief background about the history of the ADA and where we're at now, moving towards disability justice, as I would say the wave moving from ADA towards justice, and then the strategies. What are some ways that we can really take what used to be sort of what could be seen as simply technical shifts in our work to changing it to be a culture shift? What can we do and embed this into our practices in terms of event planning and how we engage with art? So a lot of information. I've tried to pack in some visuals and some short videos, and just raise your hand at any point if you have a question. All right. Are there any questions now? Okay. There's a lot of different definitions of accessibility. And I was going to do a fun activity to have you write your own definitions in the chat. But let's see what happens. When you think of accessibility, what comes to mind? Maybe not reading these definitions, but just close your eyes and what words come to mind? You can speak it, you can write it. Wheelchair access ramps. I know, right? Why is that? That's like the first thing we think of sometimes, right? What else? Screen readers. Nice. Closed captioning. And I'm just reading out things in the chat. Resources. Yes, there's always, we need more resources for everyone. Parking spaces, handicap parking spaces, inclusive to all. Yay. Yes. So when I first came across the term accessibility, I thought it was only referring to, does this meet ADA compliance? You know, this was years back. Angela says being able to get in the room, wheelchair ramps, sidewalks that have a way to roll down to the street. Yes, all of those things are amazing physical features to make sure that a space is accessible. I also want to say that I am a arts programmer, an artist, an administrator, but I am not an expert in ADA compliance or audits or things like that. I am a practitioner just like all of you, so I'm continuously learning. This workshop is not a a certification or a training by any means. It's an attempt to share resources and share conversation. So I just wanted to share that as a disclaimer. And I'm definitely open to, if you have a different definition or have more to share, please lift that up. Or if I share something that you're like, you have a question about where it came from, please don't hesitate. So we want to make sure that the conditions of potential inaccess we're basically removing any potential barriers to make that 100% accessible and inclusive to our entire community. So you'll notice that in the application, there's questions about this. So I just wanted to lift those up to give you context for the workshop. And hopefully some of these things, some of these suggestions and strategies will help you answer these questions. Angela's question in the chat says, what is a screen reader? That's a great question. A screen reader is an assisted device that will help someone who is blind or low vision or deaf to access different aspects of a website or digital content. So for instance, when we'll get into that as well, but for instance, if you had a screen reader and you were going through a website it would take you through the content and it would read to you all of the text. And if it got to an image, it would tell you what that image was if it had the appropriate image description or alt text included in the website HTML. So that's a really brief. It does more things than that, but that's basically what it does. So there's 2 questions on the application. How are you making the public aspects or public components of your project accessible to individuals with disabilities? I do want to lift up that this is more of the American way of talking about, in terms of talking about individuals with disabilities or people with disabilities in other countries. And it's becoming more adopted in the United States to say disabled persons. So I want to just say that, you know, it could be written both ways, but I might actually move towards saying disabled persons or disabled people throughout in how I responded to this question. So we're talking about folks who are deaf, hard of hearing, deaf, blind, have any difficulty speaking, physical limitations or disabilities, something that's developmental, learning, mental illness, or chronic illness. So oftentimes a disability could be invisible, and those are also things that we want to take into consideration. I'm going to get into some of that in terms of the strategies and what you can do. Explain how the workshop or digital physical work that you're going to produce and how you're going to distribute those components will ensure that it's accessible to all audiences. So this is physical spaces you might use, any language barriers that could be encountered, transportation, and digital access. I don't know about you, but that's a lot, but we're going to break it down, okay? Any questions before I go forward? Can I get a thumbs up if I'm speaking too, the pace of speaking is okay for you all? Thumbs up. Oh, I got 1 thumbs up. Okay, great. I'm also testing you to see if you know where the reactions are on your Zoom. Okay, cool. That you all are still with me. Good work. All right. So just a really brief history, because again, this is it's not a history course in Americans with Disability Act, but traditionally there was a medical model in terms of how we talked about disability, which really framed things in terms of a lack of function. It was more of a defect or something that needed to be fixed. Over the years, there's been a movement towards the social model of disability, which talks about the relationship with the environment of the person, and what those barriers or other sort of attitudes in society that really impact the person with a disability. This is what advocacy created the Americans with Disabilities Act through the lens of the social model. What are the civil rights that disabled people deserve to have protected in the same way that we don't discriminate on the basis of race, color, sex, national origin, age, or religion. The things that are prescribed because of the ADA and other sections of the different laws like 508 and 504 are related to the different areas of public life that need to have basically giving us really clear guidelines on how to do that. And if we look at it as guidance and less like, we need to do this or we're going to, get fined or things like that, that's really not how we want to see that. It's just like, how do we make this better for everybody? I told you it was going to be very brief. The ADA covers and applies to employers of 15 or more employees, for-profit and nonprofit alike. So I want to lift that up because a lot of times smaller nonprofit arts agencies they say, I can't do any of this. We're so small. We don't have money to do this. Well, so first of all, don't be worried because legally you aren't held to the same standard of like a government agency or a corporation that has, let's say $1 million or more budget, right? You're not held to the same standard. So one, take a deep breath and go, "Whew, okay." But you also have an opportunity to be more flexible, to really practice a lot of these things that even though government agencies and larger corporations are required to do them, they don't do them that well. And I think what I'm going to advocate for, especially with the creatives in the room, is that we are the culture makers. We are the leaders in terms of showing up and showing how. So I'd like to see some of these strategies incorporated in a way that is easy, fun, and also part of the art practice. And I have some videos along the way that will show you how to do that with audio descriptions and with different like captions and things like that. All right, I'm going to pause there if there's any other questions. No questions? Okay. All right, I've got a fun, very short video that I'd like to share. Hold on one second, because this, I need to swap over. Sorry about that. We're moving towards disability justice. I'm not sharing my audio on this, so one second. Let me swap which screens I'm sharing. One second. All right.
Welcome.
We're sure glad you're here.
All right.
Get comfortable.
Are you able to hear that? Okay, great.
What comes to mind when you think of the word identity?
It's low, Jennifer. Can you raise the volume on your device?
That help us understand who we are and where we come from. African American,
Gay,
Asian,
Muslim,
Indigenous,
the way you think about yourself, the way you are viewed by the world,
heterosexual Pacific Islander,
white lesbian,
cisgender Mexican,
black man. Were those some of the things that came to mind?
did blind, or deaf,
Or lupus?
or depression,
Or black male COVID-19 long hauler?
or white lesbian wheelchair user?
Or any kind of disability?
Well, for many of us, disability is an identity,
and a community and a culture.
both a socially constructed identity
And also an identity that people choose and even celebrate.
You see, disability is a natural part of the human experience.
Not a problem to fix.
or an issue you can choose not to focus on.
So, why is it important to see it this way?
Well, 15% of the world's population is living with a disability or disabilities.
And each of those people have parents, or siblings, or children.
Disability can and does affect all of us. It cuts across age,
Race, gender,
Ethnicity.
it's something you can be born with or acquire.
At any point in your life.
and because disability itself is hugely diverse,
There are infinite ways in which we live and experience the world.
We often talk about the importance of bringing your whole self to the table.
But what happens when part of who we are is less welcome?
when we value people without disabilities over people with disabilities,
This is called ableism.
Ingrained attitudes continue to degrade and stigmatize people with disabilities.
While it's common to use language like
Insane,
or lame,
dumb,
These terms label people with disabilities as deficient and inferior.
And undermine our collective work toward justice.
now
On top of understanding the effects of ableism, there's something else that's important to know.
Although disability can affect all of us,
It does not affect all of us equally.
Inequity is exacerbated for disabled people who are members of other minority groups.
When you take racism,
Add a slice of ableism,
And then some patriarchy on top.
well, then you are crushed by our systems.
So if you are a person of color,
A woman,
incarcerated, living in poverty, or in more than one of those groups.
you are much more likely to have a disability.
And people of color with disabilities,
are the most likely to live in poverty and be unemployed.
but there is good news.
Everything that's wrong with our society was a set of choices. And the beautiful thing is that together we can make different choices.
so together,
Let's take another deep breath.
And imagine,
What choices can we make to truly accelerate full inclusion?
What choices can we make to collectively dismantle ableism?
What choices can we make to fuel our march towards social justice?
There is so much.
You can.
Open up the conversation.
Ask questions
And listen and learn.
to move past our collective fear toward action.
You can,
create a safe space for disability identity.
including your own.
you can ensure that people with disabilities are involved in decision-making and agenda setting.
You can,
Center the priorities of disabled people in your advocacy.
and commit both time and budget to making all your organization's activities accessible.
And inclusive.
You will make mistakes.
And it's okay.
But don't let fear hold you back.
Together, we can celebrate how our differences make us stronger.
Unite us, in fact.
Together,
We can talk about what each of us contributes and honor our interdependence.
In making our systems and structures, our communities, culture, and language accessible and free from discrimination.
We won't have to imagine what a just world looks like any longer.
Because together,
We will have built it.
There is no justice without disability.
I'm sorry that that was maybe not as loud as it could have been. I think that was as loud as I could make it on my end. I'm happy to share the link to that again. That was produced by the Ford Foundation. What was that, Angela? Oh, you're like, oh, happy hands. Okay, cool.
That's a cheer. No, that's
Yeah.
applause. That's a hip hip hooray.
Right on. Okay. So I'm moving to sharing screen this way so it's easier for me to be able to control and kind of toggle back and forth. I want to move forward again with the sentiment that was expressed in that video, which is that we have to change the framework. We started one place and we have the opportunity to make choices moving forward. And with this funding and with this programming, you get to make those choices. And we would love for them to be guided by your community, including as many of the various disabilities as possible, and really taking that into consideration as you design the program from the very beginning. So this is a holistic view rather than just like, okay, I have to make these accommodations here and there. What has been your experience in your own world, in your own practice with disability justice, and how does that show up for you? Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, please share either in the chat if you don't feel comfortable sharing out loud, or
No, I can talk. Hi. I how is our own, what has our own experience been? That was the question, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
whatever
I think,
way you interpret that.
yeah, I was teaching at a community college when the pandemic started, and we had to shift everything online, and we were using online platforms for everything. And, you know, I had never heard of any sort of, you know, I'd never known what the little symbol of like the little body with the arms outstretched was at the bottom of websites. I never, or, you know, and so we had to take all of these classes to make our content accessible. So closed captioning for videos, and all of the documents we would upload for students had to be formatted in a certain way so that a screen reader could read it logically. And it really like made me think. I just kind of, I think it was important because these are things I never would have thought of. And of course I would want to be able to make my materials available to anyone. But it's, yeah, I think we're in this place right now where even if we're not encountering a lot of people that we perceive as disabled, or, you know, I was teaching culinary arts where it's like, we kind of hope our students are able to, you know, see what they're doing. That's really important. But at the same time, we're not going to assume that everybody, it's just, it's helped me to kind of be a lot more accommodating in my work, I think. But it is, it's, you know, it's not easy because sometimes you don't think of, you can't think of everything. It's like we're in this new place of as a society. So
Yeah,
that's my
definitely with
experience.
the digital stuff. I hear you on that for sure. Angela.
I, as a storyteller and a musician, when I have done assemblies or sometimes been in a classroom when there was someone who needed support hearing, they would give me a device to wear around my neck, and that was connected wirelessly to something the child or the teacher was wearing, and so it allowed them to hear me, um, to hear me. So that's been the main thing.
What did they, do you remember what they called that device?
No, but it was very, it was quite normal. And I'd been asked a number of times, and it just was on a rope, and I would just wear it in front of my body, and it was picking up my voice, and somehow the child or teacher who needed it could hear me clearer.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Personal FM system. Thank you.
I have a colleague who's using something now she calls a bug, and she brings it to meetings, and she has hearing aids, and that small object is passed from one person to another when we're in the room together, and it allows her to hear the speaker. We give it to each other. She calls it a bug, and everybody just, you know, gives it to each other, and she can hear us better.
I see a couple raised hands. Go ahead and unmute and share.
Hi, this is Joan. I have worked with students or had young people that were like considered like developmentally delayed. And so the only thing is, since photography is very visual, you know, just using visuals to help explain things better and just maybe wording it a different way. So that's been my experience.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that. You're getting into like the multimodal. So I'm not going to read this out, but I think a consideration as you're planning your events, right, is what are the various ways that you can better understand the needs of your community? If you're not able to directly involve them as a co-designer of it, can you use a survey of needs pre-event planning? Can you automatically incorporate multilingual, multimodal, and cultural norms in terms of how you plan the event and all of the content. Can that just be a part of the process? So it doesn't seem like it's, you know, an afterthought. And then, you know, using the Healthy Places Index for a little bit more information. I know that's something we reference in this program quite a bit. It does talk a little, it does show you a little bit of the demographics, some of the transportation issues, education and other healthcare challenges. So you get to know your audience so that you can help plan and support them. Yeah. So this was something I found interesting that I just wanted to share out. I was looking at the top stuff, the text there that is not highlighted with a Black background that starts with the key to making events accessible. That's all come from Cornell University's website in terms of their public statement that they include in event planning. We strive to host inclusive, accessible events that enable all individuals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One thing that I noticed in some of my research is a small shift in the lower, the section in Black. Could you, instead of asking people to invite people to ask for those formats and don't make it sound like a chore? So for example, just simply say, please ask us for this information in alternative formats, rather than this is available upon request. And it kind of stopped me, and I was like, that seems like such a small thing, but it really isn't, right? That upon request, like, oh, we're putting you out if we ask you for this, versus the first, please ask us for this information in alternative formats. We want to do this for you. And if you don't tell us, we won't know. But the second one makes it seem like we're being put out by you asking. So I just want to preface that with, like, we really slow down, look at how you phrase things. Talking about respect for folks around strong fragrances, that was something I'd never seen before. Are there things that you include in your publicity or on your own websites that talk to any of these things? And do you feel like sharing those with the group? Feel free to unmute, or you can put it in the chat. Okay, stop me if you think of something. I'll keep going. All right, so a previous workshop that we hosted versus the flyer for the one that you're currently are attending. What do you notice about the one on the left that's included, and what's not included in the one on the right?
The graphics for all of the arts councils are not included on the right.
The one on the, oh, sure. Yep. We don't have the logos on the one on the right.
And also the dates and times for,
Oh,
I
yeah,
guess
well,
they're two
there
different
were
things.
two different ones. Yeah.
Right.
So one was like 3 years ago. The left one mentions the interpretation is provided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very, very clear.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. That's not supposed to go backwards. Is
There's
it
also a question, and in the ever wanted to make your arts programming more, there is sort of a prompt in the green one.
Mm-hmm. Does that give you a sense of what the workshop might be about?
Sure. Yes.
Does the one on the right give you any sense of what the workshop's going to be about?
Well,
kind of.
It does. But I also recognize that I would not even see that unless I don't think I'd even get that graphic in my inbox if I wasn't already connected in some way to the project, but maybe not.
Right. Well, that's a really good point. I'm just trying to, and I can just talk you through the differences because I'm just
Yeah.
using this as a sort of comparison example of the information on the left. The title is very clear. The date and the time is very clear. So is the one on the right. It's very clear on the one on the left how to register and who to call if you have access related questions. Right, there's an email, there's a name. None of that's included in the one on the right. It also says RSVP using the link in your bio, right? So that's something we'll get around to, but generally it's best to not include language like that in flyers, even if it's off Instagram, it's very common, but trying to get away from that in other contexts. Or, even just a QR code, because what if someone doesn't have a phone? Okay, so what might you include or think about in your registration for your meetings to ask, like, that you could assist or provide for folks? These are some examples, but it's not, this is not all inclusive. So I'm wondering looking at this list, what might be missing? What else is missing? Name. Is a name missing from this list? Oh yeah, well yes, sorry, you would need generally like their name and email, but in terms of anything that you might include for an access checklist.
I would wheelchair access. I was at an event recently where the only place the wheelchair person could be was in the back of the room. And that really bothered me, and I shifted it for her. So that's just wheelchair access. That's not, they had her actually parked in front of the door where everybody was walking in. It was horrible, noisy.
You might, after the next bit where we get into other suggestions, you might be able to add to this list. I was just curious what kind of comes up that could be missing from this. Parking, language interpretation, exactly. Well, wheelchair access is like, yeah, but that doesn't talk about parking. It doesn't talk about, it doesn't directly ask for ASL. So that could be a little bit more specific, right? Okay, this is something that is, I think, really useful to start to include in your RSVPs and registrations. And you could adapt it or include it, according to your community. Okay, so we're going to get into a bunch of strategies.
I'm seeing Joan's hand up.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see it. Joan, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. It must have got stuck. Okay. I don't know how that happened. Never mind.
All right. No worries. Again, unmute and just interrupt me because sharing the screen, I can't always see when folks have their hands up. So we're going to get into talking about the physical spaces, accommodations, changes that can be made, suggestions to consider. And I'm going to go through these. There's quite a lot of them. And they're not intended to be, I'm not going to spend too much time on each one because but if you have a question or want to add to it, I'll leave space after I introduce it. The best way to figure out what the best approach to accessibility is for you and your organization and your community is to communicate with the public, with your community who's attending, and to make sure that those statements are public on the website. They are very clear in in the flyers, and that you're also announcing that at the event you have someone assigned to be there directing, working with with folks. You know, Angela mentioned that you were working directly with a student. It's really lovely when you can have a staff who's assigned specifically to work with audience members that need a little bit more assistance, and to know that you've set that aside for them. Again, we try to do what we can with capacity. None of these things are, you try to do a little bit of all of them, but it's not you can't do everything, right? Especially if you're one person or if you're a staff of two, but you do your best. The mobility, right? This would be getting into the ADA compliance, making sure that doorways meet that space requirement, and also the ramps. Again, temporary ramps can be rented or purchased, and you can utilize that with your budget. Again, restrooms. It's important to think about relabeling restrooms so that they're gender inclusive, changing up your signage, and also signage to help people find them. Where is the restroom? It's sometimes people don't want to have to ask. So having that really clear signage. What do you do if you're at a rural location? How do you do signage? How do you do restrooms? Okay, I can tell you some of them can be rented, right? They can, yeah, rent a porta potty. I was going to say, Sarah, you probably have rented like the ADA porta potties. So you can make accommodations. Burtech, I know, delivers ADA compliant restrooms. And you can print out your own signage. Get creative, you're artists. You would never believe that the air quality can cause cognitive impairments for people. Asthma, allergic reactions. This is actually on the list. So asking people to consider how they utilize indoor spaces is actually a social justice issue. Not only are logistics and warehouses causing outdoor air quality issues, but we really should consider, are you lighting like really fragrant candles, those kinds of things? A lot of people have sensitivity to that, and it can cause cognitive issues. Are you providing childcare? Can you provide childcare? If you can't do that directly, are there things for children to play with if they're a little bit older and don't need direct supervision? Is the event family friendly? You can state that in all of your materials. So again, these are like really simple things that we can do. Make the programming as well as the communication about the programming more clear to folks. Because the clearer that it becomes, the more likely you're going to draw people to your event, right? Oh man, they're providing all of these different things. I can bring my kid. They're helping with transportation. They care about how I breathe. They're going to think, man, I want to be involved with this organization. These are all examples and ideas that I culled from a really amazing resource that I will share directly with you as well. Sensory rooms is something that you can provide for folks, the neurodiverse public, if they need a space to calm down. And honestly, a lot of us could use these spaces, right? So it's the lighting is dimmer, there's more calming activities, there's less stuff in there. It helps them regulate their the stimulation from at an event. I wonder how we could do that. Does anyone have ideas about how you could do that without a lot of resources? If it was a public event space, what's something that you could do to provide a sort of calming?
Well, one of the things I think of is, this is Angela, you could get headphones that some students have sound issues with loud noise, so they wear noise canceling headphones for while they're in class.
That's a great idea.
So that's handing an object over to a person. You know, probably in COVID they wouldn't have wanted to do it, but you could have cloths to clean the headphones between. And I personally have a hard time with overhead lighting, and I never wear hats, but I've often thought I should keep a baseball hat so that I could have something over my eyes when I'm in a room that has overhead lighting, because I have a hard time keeping my eyes open sometimes in that kind of a space.
Thank you for sharing those. Those are two really great things to lift up. One, a great strategy, right, with the headphones piece. And when you said that, it made me think, oh, I could just put up like a cloth in the corner of a room, right? If you don't have an additional room, you can create a delineated space with some of these items. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Okay, so transportation. Is this an access issue? Of course. Do people know how to get there? Is it a rural location that you maybe need to give really detailed instructions to get to? Is there signage along that road? Is there lighting along that road? Is it actually is it going to limit folks who don't have extra spending money to get there, right? It's not only that maybe the event's free, but it's across town and they have to take a bus to get there. Could you provide a small pool or a stipend to make sure that transportation isn't a barrier? So just some thoughts around transportation, because we want to get people there, right? And when we get there, we want them to have a great time. We have some great examples of ASL, American Sign Language, happening in the virtual space today. It's a great option to have in person. It's an incredible experience to be around. I love it. It is language interpretation, right? This is not a direct translation that's happening. And again, you don't have to offer it at every single event, but ask your community, at what events it's most useful, and then just continue to offer it on a consistent basis, depending on your budget. Again, it's showing the effort, it's changing the culture so that we're seeing it more frequently. Is your event affordable? Can you offer a sliding scale? Can you offer it for free? These are all really wonderful things to be able to work into your grant budget, as well as generally how you promote your events. One thing I've noticed is that it's hard to make something entirely free because sometimes people then don't show up. So there's a fine balance, right, of like being low cost or free and accessible, and then people not valuing it to a degree. So that's something that you would have to decide on your own. Do you have any questions? No, talking a lot, and we're about to get to a really fun example. So it'll probably perk you all up because it's a dance piece. But I wanted to just pause here if you have any questions. Does it make sense that all of these pieces are access related? Maybe not in the traditional sense, but hopefully it's expanding the way that you're thinking about how you can respond to these questions. I see a couple of emojis. If I were to do an audio description of what I'm seeing, I would say, I see two yellow emoji hands giving me the thumbs up in the upper right corner of my screen. Okay.
And if you were to go further, you'd say, well, there's a badge from the Joshua Tree National Park Association.
Yep.
There's Bougainvillea. Someone has an image, Sky's the Limit, with blue and white drawings. Beautiful.
Yeah, thanks. Right. Thanks for sharing, Joan, in the chat too. Not having thought about transportation or sliding scale. Question from Anne is, do these things fall under administration? ASL is an ASL interpreter and artist. That's a very good, very, very good question. I will write that down and ask that. And we'll put it out to the group when I get an answer. Thanks for asking. All right. So audio description is really interesting. How do you make a piece that's in movement, a dance, for instance? How do you make that accessible to someone who can't see it? Oh, Angela asked a really good question. Can we ask the interpreters who are here whether or not they consider themselves artists? One thing that I was reading is that while folks are providing service as an interpreter, they don't like to be asked questions generally because they're actually working. So I'm not going to ask them that question. Okay, so this could be live narration with the headset, or it could be something that's included in the video itself. I found this really amazing dance video that I wanted to share with you all. We can watch the whole thing or about half of it. It's about 6 minutes long, but it's wonderful. I just really like it. Yeah, and I totally hear you in terms of the question. Yeah, it's about 6 minutes long. We'll probably do about 3/4 of it just so that I can get through and make sure I have time for y'all's questions. Does that sound okay? I know you'll enjoy this video. It includes an audio description of the performers before they're introduced, as well as of the space, and then of the actual dance itself. I'll go ahead and play that for you because we got to have some art in this whole presentation.
Are you checking share sound in the window before you share? So when you say share screen on the Zoom share screen window, in the bottom left, there's a little box that says share sound for the video. It's in the Zoom screen.
Yeah, I'm checking that. 1 second.
It'll be louder.
Let me just. Okay, let me reshare. I want this to be good, so it doesn't give me that option.
So when you click on share screen, you're not seeing before you check on what you're gonna before clicking on your desktop. Oops. When it's showing you your desktop in the Zoom screen in the bottom left.
Yeah, it does that. It does that. We're good.
Okay, sorry for I'm talking.
No. Thank you, because I want you to be able to hear it. So let's start it, and I'll make sure that. Tell me if you cannot hear it. Again, right? We're clearly communicating that it's okay to tell me you cannot hear. It's important for you to have a good experience, right? Play. Can you hear this?
No.
You cannot hear that?
No.
Can other people not hear that? You should not see any. Oh, you can't hear it. Okay. Thank you for letting me know that you cannot hear it.
I think I heard something, but it was really, really low.
It's very, 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 very low. Like mumbling.
I'm sorry about that. I just don't know exactly why it's not working.
I suppose you could put the link in the chat and we could view it on our computers. We could all individually look at it.
Let's try that, and then I will play it. Sorry, everyone. I don't know how to get that working because it's here. This video is as high as it can go. It's on my screen. It's as high as it can go. Okay. Let me chat now. Gotta love Zoom. So not really. Sometimes I hate this thing. Okay. Here we go. There's the YouTube link. And I will go ahead and play it here just for the sake of the recording.
Jumpy Star is a wheelchair in dark short hair, long arms, Jumpy Star's pronouns are they them. DeMarco is an African American muscular man. He is a wheelchair user and has dark hair that is twisted. DeMarco's pronouns are he them. Yuko is from Japan. She is about 5 feet tall, petite, with medium brown hair. Yuko's pronouns are she, her. All of the dancers are wearing black tops with grayish hair and dark sneakers. The opening shot of Flutter is from above, and then the camera zooms in. The old concrete that they are dancing on has wheel-tracked spirals from narrow heel beams, with the dancers walking over toward each other, making direct eye contact. The backdrop around them is of the San Francisco Bay. Blue skies with some distant clouds above and some nearby structures are the shipping containers, metal fencing, and an old traffic control tower, and some long beige airplane hangars with many rooms. The whole piece takes place in this location with the camera panning around them while zooming near. The opening shot zooms in from a bird's eye view to close-ups as the three dancers come together while making eye contact with each other. They all extend and arm upwards, focusing their heads in opposite directions as the camera zooms out, and in unison, softly DeMarco turns away and then back while Jean-Pierre joins him. The three move together, softly, changing direction multiple times, guided by gesture. Close up on DeMarco, gesturing sharply with his arms while changing direction. The camera pans around as they move in unison and pick up speed with arm gestures that change direction. They make spiraling patterns that begin with their head and cascade down their body. They have open arm turns and stretched rhythmic arms and occasionally click their fingers, their wrists. Yuko spirals to the ground, swings her legs forward and back, clicks. She back up, and the three move clicking arms, changing direction, coming down. The movements feel staccato and undulating. They move in and out, being together, rolling through their torso, extending an arm, changing direction. Heads swirl around. Lots of arm gestures that reach in front of them, pressing up. Shoulders initiate movement forward and back. Lots of changing direction. The camera is right near them, pressing of arms up and down, out. Yuko flutters in between Jean-Pierre and DeMarco. Some of their movement patterns feel quick, stop, and melt. They reach for the sky with clouds overhead. Another quick shot from up above. And then the camera returns to eye level, where they turn, one turns up a leg, they spin, flip their heads, surge forward. Another bird's eye view. Yuko does a wild spin to the forearm and leg while Jean-Pierre and DeMarco spin on the chair. They all reach, twist. They keep their tight formation, triangular formation. They have moments of balance, swooping, and then up into a big jump, extended legs and arms. Fast, changes of direction. Arms flipping forward. One of them would move and then the others would freeze for a beat or two. Clouds of bright white up above and behind them. sharp gesture of arm, fierce focus, and a tight formation. They found each other, fluttering, clicking, surging. The camera continues to pan.
So you have the link, and would love for you to watch that full video. It's gorgeous. A great example of how to do audio description for movement. You can do that. Again, it's interpretation as well. You're describing what is happening in a way that's giving the visual cues, the context, as much as possible to someone who's unable to see it. How do you do that? Because you can't experience, how do you experience dance when you can't see it? These are great questions, right? How do we make arts experiences accessible for people? Audio description is one way to do it. If you want to learn more about that, there is a audio description movement, and I have in the resources that I'll send to you an incredible resource guide to how to learn how to do it, and more examples of it. All right, any questions or any responses that y'all would like to share? I saw in the chat, Joan said that was interesting. Sorry about the sound issues. Okay, we'll keep moving on. Hi, Angela. Fabulous. I know, right? It's gorgeous, right? To see it. This is why we do this work. Can we make language justice a part of our everyday? Almost 18% of the US population is Spanish speaking. Ideally, our events would be bilingual, with simultaneous Spanish happening, right? So that the event, someone here would be doing Spanish and I would be doing English, we would be doing it instead of, the option is that you can tune into the live Spanish interpretation happening, but that still establishes and reinforces a dominance of dominant language, right? Because it's first presented in English, and if you just happen to need to have Spanish interpretation, then you have to go to this other room, right? There's a hierarchy there, but if we can start to move towards, being bilingual, I know Angela, you're bilingual, there's other folks in the room who I think also are, that ideally I would be presenting this language in both, or this presentation in both languages. My Spanish is not good enough for that. CART is a way to do captioning that's live. So instead of what's happening here, you can access closed captioning. That is an AI service through rev.com. That is not a live person. It is much more accurate if you hire someone and that in real time, they're actually typing in the speech to text. Highly recommend that if you can afford that and include that. Otherwise, closed captioning is oftentimes free, or it's very, very low cost to be included in programs. Okay, so yeah, closed captioning again, that's what you'll see. The image description, closed caption symbols, 2 white capital letters, C's inside of a black rectangle with rounded corners. Please, everyone should be at least offering closed captioning. What is an image caption? On a website, you will oftentimes see right below it an image description or an image caption. It oftentimes will give you a really brief description of what it is. It could be a landscape, so you're describing what the landscape looks like. It might also give credit to the photographer, might give copyright information. All of that could be image caption. You will also see it longer. A visual description is different from an image caption. Visual description is oftentimes lengthy and describes a full piece of artwork and talks about the history of the art, artist, the artwork, and kind of gives you a little bit more of the interpretation of the piece. An image caption is really simply what it is, where it is, colors, textures that you're seeing, and it's oftentimes very brief, 1 to 3 sentences. We're going to practice that in a second too. Alt text. What is an alt text? Alt text is not anything that you would ever see unless you had a screen reader. Alt text is alternative text. An image caption is something you would actually write out on a website or potentially on a flyer. So that, I don't know exactly why you would put an image caption on a printed flyer, but you could. Alt text is something that is read by HTML, so that if a screen reader is going through that on a website, it would read out the visual or the audio description of what the image is. So I have a couple of examples. So in 1 to 2 sentences, how would you create, or what would you write for the first image, the one on the left? For talking about very clear, not emotional interpretation, but just clearly describing what does this image look like? Come on, you guys. We're
I'll
all
say it.
artists here.
I'll do it. There is pale green seagrass in the foreground with sand on the bottom. The sun is high. There's shadow on the sand. And there's sand beyond the seagrass, and then the waves, the seashore. And the waves are small. There's white foam, but it is a thin line.
That's awesome. Thank you. Tall, Sarah Witt, tall grasses are growing near a sandy bank. I'm guessing that was bank. Gentle ocean waves are breaking along the ocean. Yeah, that's right. Beach scene, sand following the water, blue sky. These are great. Awesome. Because you have to keep it like 1 to 2 sentences, right? Angela, you got very like poetic with yours, which was great, but you are usually not given that many characters. How about the one on the right? There's no wrong answers here. Just practice. We have to get in the practice of doing this. Because we're so visually oriented.
Can you make it bigger? It's hard to see. I should get my glasses.
Of course. I'm so glad you asked me to do that.
It's like, what's back there?
Oh, how's that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wait, can you see my descriptions at the bottom? You all are cheating.
The closed captioning window is blocking it, so I didn't see it.
This is one on the right now. It seems blurry. I see 2 people are bundled up in the freezing cold tundra of blank. Dog chases them in the background. Nice. So you get the idea, right? Is a clear description of just what is visually there, so that someone who's going through the screen or the platform, that would be read out to them, so they wouldn't lose out on the visual information. And that's why it's important to think through text. Joan says, person bundled in warm clothing, face covered, snowy scene, dog in the background. Nice. It's important to think through when we include visual content. Is it necessary? Is it important for understanding the content? Because oftentimes we'll throw in an image and it's not completely necessary, right? And then there's certain audience members that might be left out by not understanding what that, or not being able to see that image. Include the image, but also include a description of it. So if you're going through, that's why in this presentation, I didn't include a lot of images. And it's not because I shouldn't have, but because in order to do that well, I would want to stop and describe appropriately every image I've included. Right? Unless I've provided an accessible document to everyone participating, who'd be able to scan and get an audio description of that.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you for the bilingual example. Would you like to read that out? Or
sure. ¿Quieres ir al baile conmigo esta noche? I would love to go to the dance with you tonight.
is that what you're thinking this person said?
No. So the person is asking a question. So the question's asked in Spanish, and the audience is Spanish speaking and English speaking. So the question is asked in Spanish and answered in English in such a way that hopefully everybody knows what just happened.
Right.
¿Quieres ir al baile conmigo esta noche? I would love to go to the dance with you tonight.
That's a perfect example. I thought you were giving us more reference to the characters on the right.
No, it's
Okay.
how I learned to do bilingual storytelling. I don't translate. I do it in such a way that I'm not repeating myself.
That's great.
That
Thank you
makes me
so much.
crazy. Thank you.
Okay, so I know we're getting close to time. I have 2 more, and then the rest you can review as homework. It's really just checklists and things to help you plan. And then I want to open it up to questions. So live streaming is a great way to make your audience, your performances accessible for people who can't get there, regardless of how many other things you did to get them there. You know, you bought a bus, you made it free, all of those different things. Make it, you know, stream it, make sure people know what's happening, and then record it and make it available to people afterwards. We've used something called StreamYard in the past with really great results. You can connect it to your YouTube account so people can view it. It's automatically saved and captioned for you. And then general guidelines around printed text is don't use bold, try not to use all caps. So, you know, look at this, when possible, use lists or bulleted items. What's easier to read? The one here, all bullets, or the one on the left that's sort of normal? I think we really got to look at that when we're doing flyers, headings and stuff. Please, please, please don't use all caps. It's really hard to read for screen readers, as well as, honestly, like I have trouble reading all caps. A sans serif typeface is really valuable. And then anyone with low vision, 16 to 18 point font is preferred for flyers. We didn't get into how you can make that. I'm going to skip to one thing real fast. Right here, I give you actually a really great example of how to do that, how to lay out your flyers in a really accessible way. But one thing that you can do for website access is you can install a plugin. Do you all see this right now? The website accessibility widget, user way. Did it switch over for you?
You say that again?
No. Okay. No. So one thing with Zoom is that when you change your screen, you have to stop sharing and reshare it. And that's kind of a pain in the butt. Okay. Okay, so this is userway.org. It's actually a WordPress widget. And it will do a lot of this stuff for you. So you see this icon on the bottom right that has the arms out to the side? Can you see that, or is your Zoom button in the way? No. Angela, can you see that here? Yeah, okay. So when you click on it,
Goes the accessibility menu.
it will actually come up with all of these options that you have, and you can see
Bigger text level 1 of 4. Bigger text level 2 of 4.
it automatically makes the text bigger.
Text level 3 of 4.
And it also up here speaks it for you.
Reading pace fast to reading pace user way screen reader disabled.
So you can access this. The screen
User way
reader will
screen
read it
reader
out for you.
enabled. Reading pace normal 1 of 3.
You can
Smart
change the contrast.
enabled.
It's really an amazing thing that you can
Dyslexia friendly font enabled.
you can do this on any website that has this plugin or this feature. It's a great way to learn what you should be looking for,
Accessibility menu button.
and to put yourself in the position of not being able to access or use a website the way that we're so used to doing it, right? Put yourself in the position of someone who is using a screen reader. And trying to switch back over to my. Okay, so I want to save some room for questions. I skipped over a couple of these things that regarded printed and digital material and how to share, or some tips for online information sharing. But to be honest, it really requires like a little bit of time and thinking through what you want to do, and taking your time to dive into learning about the different ways you can make your materials more accessible. We've kind of touched on a lot of them, and I want to leave some room for some individual questions. And I will pause there, and I will share all of this with you. I promise. Do y'all have any questions? I know that was a lot, and thanks for sticking with it, because it took me a long time to put that together. So it's nice to have people here to share it with. It could even just be questions you have about your projects and how to make them more accessible, how to think through them out loud. I spoke with Faye earlier about a project idea, and we came up with some cool ideas just by talking about them. So everyone learns from listening to everybody else as well. You're welcome, Faye. No questions?
This is Angela again. I'm thinking that because most of the time when I work, I am the invited guest. I'm not the producer. I am not the presenter. So it's really great to see these considerations, because generally that is done in it before I get there. I mean, and I haven't been doing that many things. I've been mostly at one school for many, many years. So I haven't been doing as many assemblies as I used to do. So it's really great to hear the considerations. Because
And knowing, you know, if you're going to work, if you're an artist who's going to work with an organization, you can look at these this list and these possible changes, accommodations, etc., and you could ask them, what is in your plan? You can ask ahead of time.
Yes.
And you can be an advocate for those things too, based off of your own experiences and based off of what you're able to do as well. So this, you know, you empower yourself with this information as an artist who might work with organizations as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, we just very briefly, I was on with storytellers that work with very young children, and we were talking about, I hadn't heard this in a while because I haven't been in the classroom for 2 years, but they were reminding that very young children have not been trained to be an audience. They're learning to be an audience. And so those of us who work with young children, we understand that, but often the teachers have so much anxiety bringing children to an assembly because they want the children to do well. So they're shutting the children down often way to at a much higher rate than the storyteller would. We're accustomed to working with audiences that move and shift, and you know, we're accustomed to that. We understand it. But it's often when you're the teacher of a group, you want them to do well, so you tend to teachers are like shutting them down because they want them to be polite. But just this great reminder that they're 5, they're 6 years old, they're just learning. And because of the pandemic, that's even more so. You know, they haven't had live events, and sometimes they're gold and sometimes it's, but storytellers particularly, not actors, I'm talking about storytellers, we're accustomed to that reciprocal exchange. We count on it. I count on it, you know.
Well, thank you for Thank you for sharing that and being my reciprocal exchange tonight too. Nice.
How's the noisy one rolling around in the back?
Are there other questions or brainstorms of ideas? Yeah. Thanks, Rebecca. Yeah, just honestly take what works for your project. You don't have to do it all, right? That should be the take home. You try to do as much as is feasible within your capacity, within your budget. Yeah. Such that a certain budget be dedicated to accessibility and not admin. I agree with that, but this is from the state. Like that's a requirement from the state. So let us ask them about interpreters, and just make sure that we get that clearance to have that included in the 80%. Anyway, I'm gonna stop the recording. I will stay on if there's any other personal questions.